Across a table scattered with gleaming crystal glasses and pricey lobster, my mother fixed me with a cold stare and uttered words that shattered me completely. She confessed she wished I had never been born so she wouldn't have to face the disappointment she saw in me. Then she snatched my PhD diploma, the result of 5 grueling years of dedication, and hurled it onto the grimy restaurant floor to make space for a cake honoring my brother-in-law. The entire room fell into stunned silence. The waitstaff froze, but I didn't shed a tear. I didn't yell. I simply rose, smoothed my skirt, and walked away. What my mother, Amanda, didn't realize as she sat there in her glittering dress, mocking me, was that I wasn't the jobless failure she assumed I was. I was, in fact, the undisclosed owner of the holding company that had just that very morning purchased the debt of her family's business. My name is Zoe, and this is the tale of how I transformed my family's cruelty into their eviction notice. Before I reveal how I brought my toxic family to their knees with nothing more than a signature, tell me where you're tuning in from in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to build your own place at the table because your family wouldn't make room for you. The evening that changed everything began as a celebration. I pulled my decade-old Honda Civic up to the Valley at Lille, one of Atlanta's most exclusive and pretentious restaurants. The valet glanced disdainfully at my battered bumper and plain gray suit, matching the snobbish air of those waiting inside. I handed over my keys and took a deep breath, clutching the leather folder containing my newly minted doctorate in economics from the University of Chicago. I had driven 10 hours straight to get there. My legs were stiff. I was fueled by coffee and adrenaline, but I wanted to share this moment with them. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, earning the highest academic degree would finally make my mother see me as she saw my sister. Stepping into the private dining room was like entering a shattered jewelry box. The space was dripping with chandeliers, and the scent of expensive perfume hung thick in the air. My mother, Amanda, held court at the head of the long table, dressed in a gold sequined gown worth more than my first car, laughing loudly at something my brother-in-law Brad said. Brad was the room's only white man, and he wore that distinction like a badge of honor. He sat with his arm around my sister Chantel, radiating confidence and ownership of the space. Chantel was radiant, her skin flawless, makeup perfect, and the diamond necklace Brad had gifted her glittered under the lights. They looked every bit like royalty. I moved toward the vacant seat at the far end of the spot usually reserved for children or handbags. No one rose to greet me. No one embraced me. My father, Thomas, gave a brief, uneasy nod before burying his face in his wine glass. He seemed smaller than I remembered, shrinking into his suit as if trying to vanish. "You're late," my mother declared sharply, cutting through the murmurs. "We already ordered appetizers. I hope you ate before coming because I'm not paying $40 for a salad for someone who can't manage their time." "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied, sliding into my seat. "A salad for someone who struggles to keep a schedule." "Hello to you too, Mom," I said, sliding into my seat. I set my diploma folder on the table, making sure not to tip over the bread basket. The traffic getting into the city was a nightmare. "Excuses are the refuge of the incapable," she declared, turning her back to me to smile brightly at Brad. "Now, Brad, where were we? Tell us again about your new office. Is it true you have a view of the skyline?" I sat there unnoticed as the waiter poured wine for everyone except me. I observed them, how my mother hung on Brad's every word, how my aunts and uncles nodded enthusiastically, eager to be connected to his supposed success. Brad was a middle manager at a logistics company, but the way he described it, you'd think he was running the stock exchange. "Actually," Amanda Brad said, leaning back and swirling his wine with a smugness that made my skin crawl, "the view is fantastic. But the best part is the power. Finally earning the regional manager title means I can really start cleaning house. You know what I mean? Getting rid of the dead weight." He glanced subtly down the table at me, a quiet smirk that clearly meant he knew exactly who the dead weight was in the room. "Oh, absolutely," my mother gushed, clapping her hands. "You have to trim the fat, Brad. That's what real leaders do. Unlike some people who waste their 20s buried in books and end up with nothing to show for it." The table erupted with polite, biting laughter. I felt my cheeks burn. I gripped my leather diploma folder tighter. They assumed I was unemployed. They thought I had spent the last 5 years living off student loans and barely scraping by. I had let them believe that because it was safer. If they knew I was actually managing a venture capital fund specializing in distressed assets, they would have drained me dry years ago. I cleared my throat, searching for a chance to speak. Actually, Mom, speaking of books, I have some news. I wanted to share something with you all. That's why I drove down. My mother raised a hand, silencing me without even glancing my way. Not now, Zoe. We're in the middle of a toast. Don't be rude. She stood, tapping her spoon against her champagne flute. The room hushed. She puffed up her chest, the sequins on her dress sparkling under the light, her eyes gleaming with proud tears. Family, friends, members of our congregation, she began, her voice thick with exaggerated emotion. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate a milestone, a moment that defines the success of the Williams family legacy. My heart pounded. Maybe she knew. Maybe someone told her about the graduation. Maybe this was supposed to be a surprise. We are here, she exclaimed, raising her glass to honor my son-in-law Brad on his promotion to regional manager. To Brad and Chantel, the power couple who keep this family in the spotlight. Cheers. The room roared. Cheers, Chantel squealed, kissing Brad on the cheek. I lowered my glass, my water glass. The disappointment settled heavy and cold in my stomach. Of course, it was always about Brad. It was always about Chantel. As the applause faded, Brad stood. He buttoned his jacket, preening like a peacock. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you all. It's truly humbling. You know, success isn't just about making money. It's about looking out for those less fortunate than you. He strode around the table, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. He stopped right behind my chair. Thanks. He circled the table, his footsteps muffled by the plush carpet, coming to a halt just behind my chair. I caught a whiff of his cologne, heavy and expensive. Then, feigning sympathy, he said, Speaking of those less fortunate, I realize things have been rough for you, Zoe. The job market's tough, especially with your background. I swiveled in my chair to face him. My background? I asked calmly. You mean a PhD in economics? Brad chuckled shortly, dismissive. Yeah, whatever it's called. The point is, I know you're struggling. I heard you're still driving that old clunker of a Honda. It gets me where I need to go, I replied. Right, Brad sneered. Well, since tonight's about celebrating success, I didn't want you to feel left out. I figured you couldn't afford a gift for me, obviously, so I got one for you. He reached into his blazer's inner pocket and pulled out a slightly crumpled white envelope, tossing it onto the table in front of me, right on top of my diploma folder. Go ahead, he urged. Open it. It's not charity, Zoe. Think of it as a little boost. I stared at the envelope, then at my mother, grinning widely, phone out, capturing the moment. I glanced at Chantel, whispering and giggling with her friend. I caught my father meticulously cutting his steak, unwilling to watch my humiliation. I picked up the envelope. It felt flimsy and cheap. I tore it open and pulled out the contents. A single coupon clipped from a Sunday flyer. Save-A-Lot supermarket, 20% off frozen dinners, limit of 5 per customer. I looked at the coupon, then the expiration date just 2 days away. I laughed. Brad slapped my shoulder hard enough to sting. Figured that's more your pace than a gift card. You know, stretch those dollars. Gotta eat to survive. The table burst into laughter. My aunts cackled. My mother grabbed the table to steady herself, laughing uncontrollably. Oh, Brad, you're terrible, she gasped, wiping tears from her eyes. But you're so kind, Zoe. Say thank you. That coupon's worth more than your fancy degree. I felt the blood drain from my face. Not because of the coupon, it was the show. They'd gathered an audience to watch me get kicked down. They needed witnesses to their cruelty to make it feel like a joke. Slowly, I placed the coupon back on the table, smoothing the creases. You find this amusing? I asked, my voice slicing through the laughter. Brad leaned in, his face close to mine. I call it reality, Zoe. You're a 29-year-old woman with no husband, no prospects, and a car that sounds like a lawnmower. You should take that 20% off and be thankful anyone's feeding you. You're eating a $200 steak my father paid for, I said, locking eyes with him. You're wearing a watch my mother mortgaged the house to buy you last Christmas, and you have the nerve to lecture me about handouts. The room fell utterly silent. Brad's smile vanished. My mother stopped recording. "What did you say?" she husked. I stood up, pocketed the coupon in my blazer. I said I kept the receipt. "Mom, I know you sold the land in Georgia, the land Grandma left us all, just to buy him that Rolex. And I know it's a fake, Brad." Chantel gasped. "Mom, she's lying. Tell her she's lying. She's jealous." "That Rolex? I know it's counterfeit, Brad," Chantel exclaimed. "Mom, she's not telling the truth. Tell her she's lying. She's just envious." Brad shouted, his face flushing bright red. "She's just a jealous, resentful little girl because no man wants her. Sit down, Zoe," my mother yelled, slamming her hand on the table. "You're ruining this family evening. You're nothing but a dark shadow over our joy." "I'm not sitting down," I said, reaching for the folder holding my diploma. "I came here to tell you I graduated today. I came to tell you I'm a doctor of economics. I came to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" my mother snapped. "Being a perpetual student? You're nearly 30. Where's the ring? Where are the grandchildren? Where's the money?" She grabbed the menu from the table and flung it at me. It hit my shoulder and dropped to the floor. "You want to celebrate? Then pay the bill." "Can you do that, doctor? Can you cover this dinner?" "No, you can't even pay for your own gas." I looked at her, the woman who gave me life, who raised me, and realized I didn't truly know her, and she certainly didn't know me. "I can pay the bill, Mom," I said softly. "I could buy this entire restaurant if I wanted to." "Liar!" Chantel shrieked. "You're such a liar. You live in a tiny apartment in Chicago. That's what I told you." I replied, "Because I knew if you knew the truth, you'd drain me dry just like you're draining Dad." My father glanced up then, his eyes moist and sorrowful. "Zoe, please," he murmured, "just stop. Stop." I looked at him. "Dad, they're humiliating me. They're mocking me, and you want me to stop?" Brad stepped forward, puffing his chest. "Listen here, you little brat. Apologize to your mother right now. Apologize to me for ruining my night, or I'll personally kick you out of here. Touch me, and you'll find yourself in jail before dessert," I warned. Brad laughed. "Jail? Who do you think you are? You're nobody." He reached out and shoved my diploma folder. It slid across the table and knocked over a glass of red wine. The dark liquid spilled everywhere, soaking the white tablecloth, dripping onto the floor, and splashing onto the blue leather cover of my degree. "Oops," Brad sneered. "Looks like your degree's washed up, just like you are." My mother stared at the spreading stain. She didn't scold Brad for causing the mess. She didn't call the waiter. She just looked at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. "Look what you made him do," she hissed. "I made him do it," I asked, my voice shaking. Not from fear, but with a fury so intense it burned my throat. "You provoked him. You came in here with your bad attitude and your ugly clothes trying to steal the spotlight." My mother grabbed my diploma folder, the one soaked with wine, and threw it on the floor. She threw my future, my hard work, my pride onto the dirty restaurant floor. "There," she said, breathing heavily. "That's where it belongs, in the trash." I looked down at the gold lettering of my name, stained purple and lying near a discarded napkin. "Is that what you think of me?" I asked, "that I'm garbage?" My mother leaned over the table, her face twisted with cruelty. "I think you're a mistake, Zoe. I think I wasted my life raising you. I look at Chantel and I see my success. I look at you and I see my punishment." She took a breath. Then she delivered the blow that broke the last bond tying me to this family. "I wish I had never had you. I wish you were never born, so I wouldn't have to look at your failure on a night that's supposed to be perfect. Context: we never came into this world, so I wouldn't have to witness your failure on an evening meant to be flawless." The quiet that followed was thick, almost choking. Even Brad averted his gaze, uneasy with the sharpness of her cruelty. I remained still for what felt like an eternity. I sensed the tears evaporating from my eyes. I felt my heart solidify into something firm, something unyielding. The waiter arrived with a cake that was frankly an affront to design. It was a 3-layered spectacle of golden fondant with sparklers so enormous it took 2 busboys to carry it. The icing scripted, "Congratulations, Brad," in elegant calligraphy that probably cost more than my rent. As they struggled to bring this behemoth to the table, my mother started clearing space with the frantic energy of someone possessed. She shoved plates aside, toppled salt shakers, and then her gaze fixed on the last object in the center of the table, my diploma folder. The blue leather case embossed with the university seal containing evidence that I had mastered economic theory and financial markets. To her, it was just rubbish. "Move this junk," Amanda snapped at me, gesturing wildly at the folder. "We need space for the cake." I reached for it, but I was too slow. In her rush to make room for Brad's celebration, my mother slapped the folder away. It spun across the tablecloth, struck a gravy boat, and landed face down on the grimy restaurant floor. The noise it made wasn't loud, just a dull, pathetic thump that reverberated in the sudden stillness of my soul. For a moment, no one moved. I stared at the folder lying near the waiter's shoe. I looked at the gravy pooling around its edges. Then I looked at my mother. She was unapologetic. She was irritated. "Pick it up, Zoe," she hissed. "You're blocking the path." Something inside me, a wire stretched tight for 29 years, finally snapped. The vibration hummed in my chest, hot and perilous. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I stood slowly. My legs felt heavy, but my hands were steady as I pressed them firmly on the tablecloth. "No," I said. The murmuring at the table stopped immediately. My mother froze, a silver cake knife poised mid-air. She turned her head slowly to face me, her eyes narrowing into thin slits. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice dropping into that low, threatening tone that used to terrify me as a child. I said no, I repeated, my voice growing stronger. "I am not picking it up, and I am not moving. You invited me here. You insisted I drive 10 hours to be part of this family. Well, I'm here, and I have something to say." Chantel sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes so hard I feared they might get stuck. "Oh my God, here we go. The Zoe spectacle. Can we just eat the cake? Nobody cares about your little outburst." I ignored her. I kept my gaze fixed on my mother. "I have a career, Mom," I said. My mother laughed, a sharp barking sound. "A career doing what? Flipping burgers, washing cars. Did you finally realize that reading books doesn't pay the bills?" "I'm a senior vice president," I lied, simplifying my real title to something they could comprehend without realizing I outrank them. "I work for a private equity firm. My starting salary is $400,000 a year." I waited for the reaction. I waited for pride. I waited for my father to glance up from his plate and smile. I waited for my mother to acknowledge she was wrong. Brad snorted into his champagne. 400 grand? Yeah, right. And I'm the King of England. Who are you trying to impress, Zoe? We all know you live in a shoebox. He was correct. Setting. England. Who are you trying to impress, Zoe? We all know you're living in a tiny, cramped space. He was right. My mother sneered. "Stop fabricating stories, Zoe. It's pathetic. You think because it's Brad's big evening, you need to invent tales to feel important. You're just a child, a jealous, deceitful child." "I'm not lying," I shouted, my voice trembling. "Why is it so hard for you to believe that I've succeeded? Why do you despise me so much that you'd rather accept failure than the truth?" "Because you're a failure," my mother shouted back, slamming the knife onto the table. The noise echoed like a gunshot. "Look at you, you're plain. You're awkward. No husband, no charm. Nothing like your sister, nothing like us." She leaned over the table, her face twisted with pure hatred. The sequins on her dress shimmered, taunting me. "You want the truth, Zoe? You want to know why we treat you like this? Because every time I see you, I see a mistake. A burden I've carried for 29 years. My father reached out and touched her arm. "Amanda, that's enough." "Shut up, Thomas," she snapped at him, brushing him off. "She needs to hear this. She thinks she's so clever with her degrees and books, thinks she's superior to us." She turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "I wish I had never had you," she said. The words came slow and sharp, each one stabbing my heart. "I wish you were never born. I wish I'd ended that pregnancy when I had the chance so I wouldn't have to sit here tonight and look at your ungrateful, miserable face while I celebrate my real family." The silence that followed was complete. Heavy and suffocating, sucking all the air from the room. I heard the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the waiters breathing behind me. I looked at my father. He hid his face in his hands. I looked at Chantel. She stared at her nails, pretending not to listen. I looked at Brad. He smirked, enjoying the spectacle. Then I looked at myself. My hands were steady now. The fire in my chest had vanished, replaced by a cold, icy calm. A strange feeling washed over me. Relief. The worst had come true. The fear I'd carried all my life, the confirmation that I was unloved and unwanted, had been spoken aloud, and I was still standing, still breathing. "All right," I said. My voice was soft, barely audible, but in the stillness it rang out loud. "All right," my mother mocked. "That's all you have to say." I bent down and picked up my diploma folder from the floor, brushed off the dust, tucked it under my arm. I said, "Okay, Amanda, you wish I was never born. Consider your wish granted." I straightened my blazer, looked her in the eye, and for the first time, I didn't see a mother. I saw a stranger, a bitter, broken woman wrapped in cheap sequins and crushing debt. "From this moment on, Zoe Williams is dead to you," I said. "You have no daughter named Zoe. Never did. Don't call me. Don't write me. Don't come looking when the price for this life you can't afford finally arrives." I turned to the rest of the table. "Enjoy the cake," I said. "I hope it tastes like victory, because it's the last sweet thing you'll savor for a long time." "You're bluffing," Chantel shouted, voice sharp. "You'll be back begging for money in a week." I didn't respond, didn't look back. "Bluffing," Chantel yelled, her tone cutting. "You'll be back on your knees asking for money in a week." I said nothing, didn't glance back. I spun on my heel and left the private dining area, moving past the host stand where staff exchanged whispers, eyes wide with curiosity. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped into the muggy night. The valet noticed me approaching. This time, no sneer. Maybe he sensed a shadow in my expression, a warning to keep away. He hurried off to fetch my Honda. I stood by the curb, watching the cars pass. My heartbeat was steady, slow thump, thump, thump. Alone, disowned, yet undeniably strong. When the car rolled up, I handed the valet my last 20. I climbed in and locked the doors behind me. In the quiet cabin, the familiar scent of worn seats brought a strange comfort. Reaching into the glove box, I retrieved a burner phone, a basic flip device, untraceable, reserved for my most confidential dealings. I dialed a number from memory. It rang once. A male voice answered. "Voice? It's Marcus, my operations chief. It's late. What's happening?" "No," I said, eyes fixed on the glowing restaurant sign where my family sliced into their perfect cake. "Everything's finally falling into place." I paused as a waiter carried champagne toward the private room window. "Activate Z Holdings," I commanded. The words felt weighty, like casting a spell. Marcus hesitated. "You mean the shell company? The one set up for aggressive takeovers?" "Exactly," I replied. "Go ahead with the purchase we planned last month. Acquire Amanda Enterprises' entire debt portfolio, all mortgages, business loans, every credit line." "That portfolio's toxic," Marcus warned. "They're deeply over-leveraged. If you call those loans, they'll collapse loose. The salon, the house, the cars." "I'm aware," I said. "Proceed." "And Marcus, track down who holds the loans on Brad Miller's car and condo. For those, no matter the premium, pay it." There was silence on the line. I heard Marcus typing rapidly. "It's done," he said quietly. "We'll own the debt by morning." "What next once we hold the notes?" I started the engine. The headlights pierced the dark, lighting the path ahead. "My orders are clear," I said. "Pressure them. Raise interest rates to the legal maximum. Demand all overdue payments. Deny every extension request. I want them trapped, panicked." "Understood," Marcus replied. "Is this personal?" "Just business, Marcus," I lied. "Just cleaning up bad investments." I hung up, tossed the phone on the passenger seat. Shifting into drive, I pulled away, leaving the restaurant and my family behind me in the rear view. As I merged onto the highway, escaping the city that had always felt like a prison, a single tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away fiercely. Amanda wanted me gone, tried to erase me, but she was about to learn you can't erase a creditor. I wasn't her daughter anymore. I was her landlord, her banker, her judge. The courtroom was now open. The file on Brad Miller was thicker than the Bible my mother pretended to read every Sunday. I sat in the dim glow of my war room at Z Holdings, multiple screens exposing the lies my brother-in-law had built his life on. The dim light of my command center at Z Holdings cast a glow over several monitors, uncovering the web of deceit my brother-in-law had constructed his life around. My private detective, Wallace, a former federal agent with a knack for finding a needle in a haystack, even if that needle was using a burner phone, had truly excelled. In less than a day, we shattered the illusion of Brad, the so-called accomplished regional manager. The truth was so pitiful it was almost laughable, if not for the damage it had caused. Brad hadn't earned a promotion. He'd been terminated 6 months prior for fabricating expense reports. Each morning, his commute was actually a drive to a Starbucks 3 towns away, where he spent 8 hours playing online poker, squandering money he didn't possess. I observed the surveillance setup Wallace had installed. We had access to security cameras inside the salon, outside my mother's home, and through some digital sleight of hand, even the webcam on Brad's laptop. It was like watching a slow-motion disaster, and I was the one who disabled the brakes. The freeze on Amanda Enterprises hit Brad like a gut punch. I could see it in his pacing around the living room of the condo my mother had purchased. Sweat dripped down his forehead, and he wiped it with the sleeve of his pricey dress shirt. His phone was glued to his ear. I tapped into the audio feed. "I told you I need a few more days," Brad whispered urgently. His voice shook, stripped of the arrogant bravado he'd displayed at dinner. "My wire transfer's stuck. It's a banking error." "I don't care about errors, Brad," a low, harsh voice snapped back. "You owe 40 grand. The interest piling up. You have until Friday or we start breaking things, starting with those nice kneecaps." The call ended abruptly. Brad tossed his phone onto the couch and buried his face in his hands. $40,000. He had gambled away my mother's money, the funds she believed were invested in the business on online blackjack and sports wagers. Now that I'd frozen the company's accounts, his safety net was gone. The rat was cornered. I switched the feed to the adjacent room. My sister Chantel was at her vanity, surrounded by ring lights and cameras, completely unaware. While her husband was bargaining for his safety next door, she was applying lip gloss for an audience of strangers. "Hey everyone," she chirped into her phone, flashing a dazzling smile. "So many of you have been asking about my skincare routine for busy boss babes. Being married to a high-powered exec means late nights and gala events, so I have to keep my glow on point." I watched her strike poses. She was living in a fantasy fueled by credit card debt and denial. She had no clue the condo she was filming in was 3 months behind on HOA dues. She didn't realize the car in the driveway was on the brink of repossession. She chatted about galas while the floor beneath her was turning to quicksand. 5 minutes later, my mother called Brad. I saw his phone light up, Amanda calling. He eyed it like it was a ticking bomb. He let it ring 3 times before answering and putting on his mask. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice instantly smoothing into this slick, confident tone that had fooled everyone. "What's going on?" Even without audio enhancement, I could hear my mother shouting on the other end. "Brad, the cards they're being declined everywhere. I tried to pay the vendor for the shampoo shipment and the check bounced. The bank says the accounts are frozen. What did you do? The shampoo supplier's check bounced and the bank says the accounts are frozen. What did you do?" Brad paced anxiously, fingers running through his hair. "Stay calm, Amanda. It's just some security measure. I shuffled funds around to improve our tax stance this quarter. It probably just triggered the system. I'll call and get it sorted. You better," my mother yelled. I look like an idiot. "Fix this, Brad." He ended the call. His facade slipped. He looked pale and defeated. He knew it was beyond repair. The money was gone spent, and the new credit line was dead because I owned it. He needed cash urgently, and options were running out. I watched him approach the bedroom door. He cracked it open and glanced inside. Chantel was still filming, chatting about moisturizing. Brad slipped in behind her, moving like a shadow, quiet and practiced. He headed straight to the walk-in closet. I switched camera views to inside the closet. Brad rummaged through the shelves. He pushed aside designer bags and reached for the safe on the top shelf. He entered the code without hesitation. Of course he knew it. Chantel trusted him completely. The safe door swung open. Inside lay the jewelry, the family heirlooms, my grandmother's legacy, which my mother had claimed and then handed to Chantel because I wasn't deemed worthy of precious gems. the diamond tennis bracelet, the pearl choker, the sapphire ring from my great aunt. Brad didn't grab everything. He was too clever for that. He took pieces she wouldn't notice missing right away, a gold bangle, diamond studs, and then reached for the velvet box at the back. Opening it revealed the emerald necklace my mother had worn at my sister's wedding. Heavy gold, deep green stones, worth at least $15,000 even on a bad day. He stuffed the necklace into his pocket, closed the safe, and backed out. Back in the bedroom, Chantel blew a kiss to the camera. Thanks for watching, lovelies. Remember, you create your own reality. Right. Brad passed her with a smile. Hey, babe, he said, rubbing his pocket. Just stepping out to meet a client. Crisis management. You know how it goes. You work so hard. Honey, Chantel cooed, gazing at him with adoration that made my stomach churn. Don't be late. I won't, he replied. I grabbed my keys and tablet. I wasn't going to watch this part on a screen. I needed to see it firsthand. I tracked Brad's car via GPS. He headed to a neighborhood Chantel would never set foot in, a strip of pawnshops and payday lenders, the kind of place where desperation lingered like thick humidity. He parked his leased Porsche outside a shop called Golden Glory. I parked across the street in my unassuming Honda, watching through tinted windows. I accessed the audio feed from his phone. We'd cloned it earlier. I need cash, I heard Brad say. Fast, no paperwork. The pawnshop owner laughed, a dry scraping sound. No deals without paperwork, buddy, unless the price is right. Brad pulled out the necklace. This is vintage, real emeralds, appraised at 20 grand. The owner hummed. I'll give you 5. 5? Brad's voice cracked. That's this, sir. Are you nuts? It's worth 4 times that. Take it or leave it, the owner said. You look desperate. Desperate men don't get market value. 4 times that amount, the shop owner declared. Take it or leave it. You look desperate, and desperate people never get fair market price. Brad paused, his heavy breaths audible, as he did the math. 5,000 could keep the bookie off his back for a few days and buy him time to spin another life for Amanda. All right, Brad agreed. 5, but I want the cash up front. 10 minutes later, I saw him leave the store. He seemed lighter, but his eyes flicked nervously around. He jumped into his car and sped away. Once he was gone, I stepped out of my vehicle and entered the pawn shop. The owner was behind the counter, inspecting the emerald necklace through a jeweler's loupe. He glanced up, taking in my modest suit. We're closed, he muttered. I set a thick envelope on the counter stuffed with $10,000 in cash. I'm not here to pawn anything, I said. I'm here to purchase. He eyed the envelope, then me. What are you after? That necklace, I said, pointing to the emeralds in his hand. The same one the man just sold him. It squinted suspiciously. That guy said it was family heirloom. It is, I replied. It belongs to my family, and I'm reclaiming it. Sliding the envelope forward, I added, 10 grand. That's double what you paid him, a quick profit for minutes of work, and I want the security footage of that sale. The owner grinned, revealing a gold tooth. You're a formidable woman. I'm a businesswoman, I corrected him. So are we done here? He handed over the necklace and a USB stick. Pleasure doing business. I walked back to my car, the cold weight of the necklace in my hand. This was the very necklace my mother had promised would be Chantel's legacy. She once told me when I was 10 that emeralds were meant for special girls. I was just ordinary. But now I owned it, along with the video of her precious son-in-law hawking it for scrap to save himself. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Zoe, he said, we've got a problem. Amanda is at the bank branch, refusing to leave until she speaks to the Z Holdings manager. She's causing a scene and telling the teller she knows powerful people. Let her rant, I said, placing the necklace on the passenger seat next to my burner phone. She's about to learn that the only person in a powerful position is the daughter she wished was dead. I started the engine. Marcus, I said, did you file the foreclosure notice? It's done, Marcus confirmed. The process server is en route to the house now. They should serve the eviction notice within the hour. Good, I said. And Marcus, yes, upload the pawnshop video of Brad to my secure server, but hold off on using it. I want to save it for dessert. I drove back toward the city, the skyline sparkling ahead. Brad thought he'd bought himself time. Thought 5,000 was his lifeline. He didn't realize it was the noose tightening around his neck. And poor deluded Chantel was at home perfecting her makeup, oblivious that her husband had just sold off her heritage to cover his mistakes. She was posting about abundance while her world was unraveling beneath her. A flicker of pity rose in me, but I crushed it immediately. Pity was for those who didn't know better. Chantel knew. She had watched me struggle for years and laughed, watched our mother mistreat me and joined in. She'd chosen her side. I pulled up the live feed on my tablet again. Chantel held up a tube of lipstick. "This shade is called Fearless," she told her followers. "And that's exactly what we are, right, ladies? Fearless. This hue is named Fearless," she announced to her audience. "And that's exactly who we are, right, ladies? Fearless." I chuckled alone in my car. Fearless. She was about to learn what true fear felt like. It felt like an empty wallet. It felt like a locked gate. It felt like betrayal. I tapped the screen, capturing a screenshot of her smiling face. "Enjoy the lipstick, sister," I murmured, "because soon it's going to be the only thing you possess." The call came 3 days after I purchased the emerald necklace. I was sitting in my office, reviewing the purchase documents for the land in Georgia that my mother had sold illegally to finance Brad's fake lifestyle, when my burner phone buzzed. It was Wallace, my private investigator. "Zoe," he said, his tone sharp and businesslike. "You need to get to St. Jude's Hospital. It's your father." My hand froze over the paperwork. "What happened?" "The process server delivered the foreclosure notice this morning," Wallace explained. "Your mother didn't take it well. She started yelling. Your father tried to calm her down." He clutched his chest and collapsed. "The paramedics say it's a stroke." A cold spike of fear hit my chest. Not for my mother, not for the house, but for Thomas. The man who had sat silently while I was abused, yes, but also the man who used to sneak me candy when my mother put me on unnecessary diets. The man who was too weak to protect me, but who I knew, in his own flawed way, loved me. "Is he alive?" I asked. "He's critical," Wallace said. "They're in the ER now." I ended the call. I grabbed my purse. This time, I didn't take the Honda. I took the company car, a black SUV with tinted windows. I needed protection. The drive to the hospital was a blur of gray roads and tight grip on the steering wheel. I told myself it was just business. I told myself I was going to assess the situation, to understand how this affected asset recovery. But my heart was pounding a different rhythm. Daddy, daddy, daddy. When I entered the emergency waiting room, the first thing I noticed was a camera flash. I paused in the doorway, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lighting. There in the corner was my family, but they weren't gathered in prayer. They weren't comforting each other. They were putting on a show. Chantel held her phone high, hunting for her best lighting. She had crafted her face into a mask of sorrowful beauty, perfectly smudge-proof mascara. A single artful tear that I suspected was applied with a dropper. She was taking selfies with the ER entrance in the background. "Praying for Daddy," I heard her whisper as she typed rapidly. "Family first, Haas life." Next to her, my mother sat on a vinyl chair, but she wasn't crying. She was on the phone, her voice loud and frantic. "I don't care what the policy says," she shouted. "I need to know if the life insurance covers strokes. Yes, I'll hold, but you better have an answer when you come back." She was checking his life insurance policy. He wasn't even dead, and she was already calculating the payout. And Brad, the so-called savvy investor, stood near the vending machine, looking pale and sweaty. He wasn't worried about Thomas. He was staring at his phone, probably checking if his bookie had sent anyone to rough him up yet. I watched them for a full minute. It was a masterclass in selfishness. My father was fighting for his life behind those double doors, possibly dying from the stress they had placed upon him. Behind those closed double doors, my father was battling for his life, possibly succumbing to the immense pressure weighing on him. And yet they were preoccupied with Instagram likes and insurance payouts. I stepped into the room. The click of my heels on the linoleum caught Brad's attention. His eyes widened in surprise. He nudged Chantel, who nearly dropped her phone in shock. My mother glanced up from her call, instantly narrowing her eyes. "Zoe, Amanda," she said, ending the call abruptly. "What are you doing here? Who told you?" I approached them, keeping my expression neutral. "I heard Dad had a stroke." Rumors spread quickly in this place. Chantel sneered, sliding her phone away but keeping it close. Did you come to watch or to ask for money again? I ignored her and turned to my mother. Is he stable? My mother rose, smoothing her skirt. Always immaculate, even in crisis, Amanda Williams demanded to look like the queen of the household. He's alive, but not because of you. She spat. The stress, Zoe, the stress of your failure, your disappearance. It broke his heart. That's why he's in there. You caused this. A fierce anger surged inside me, almost blinding. I did this. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her his stroke came after I foreclosed on the house she couldn't afford. I wanted to say he collapsed because her web of lies was unraveling, but I stayed silent. I'm here to see him, I said softly. You're not seeing anyone, my mother said, stepping in front of me. You're not family. Remember what you said, you're dead to us. A nurse in blue scrubs pushed through the double doors holding a clipboard. Family of Thomas Williams, she called. We all turned. My mother instantly donned the grieving widow's mask and hurried forward. I'm his wife, she said, her voice trembling with false emotion. How is he? He's stable for now, the nurse replied, looking exhausted. He's sedated. The stroke was severe, but caught early. We're moving him to the ICU for monitoring and scheduling an MRI and angiograms. Oh, thank God, my mother sighed, clutching her pearls. Do whatever it takes. Save him. We'll do our best, ma'am, the nurse said. But before transferring him to the ICU and arranging tests, we need to handle billing. Mr. Williams' insurance card on file was declined. The policy has expired. The room went silent. Expired? My mother repeated, voice rising. Impossible. Thomas pays that premium every month. It seems the last 3 payments were missed. Ma'am, the nurse said gently, we can still treat him. This is an emergency, but for the private ICU room you requested and the specialist care, we need a deposit or a valid credit card on file. How much? Brad asked, voice cracking. For admission and care over the next week, we require a $50,000 deposit for uninsured patients to guarantee the private suite and specialized team. 50,000, Chantel gasped. My mother spun to Brad. Brad, honey, give them your card. The company card. We'll fix the insurance mix-up later. Brad went pale. He patted his pockets, eyes darting wildly. I forgot my wallet, he stammered. You forgot your wallet, my mother shrieked. At a time like this, use your phone, Apple Pay. My phone died, Brad lied, clutching the very phone he'd been staring at moments before. Use your phone, Apple Pay, she urged. My phone's dead, Brad fibbed, clutching the very device he'd been fixated on moments earlier. And the bank's fraud system froze my cards this morning. You know, like I said, security measures. My mother glanced at him, and for the first time I caught a glimpse of uncertainty in her eyes. But she suppressed it. She had to. If Brad wasn't wealthy, then she was nothing but a fool. She turned to Chantel. Chantel, give them your card. Brad will reimburse you tomorrow. Chantel hesitated. Mom, you know I just bought the new Tesla. My credit limit is, I don't have $50,000 available. I thought Brad was handling it. The nurse observed the scene with a look of gentle sympathy. Ma'am, if payment can't be provided, urgent care might have to wait until an opening arises in the public system. No, my mother barked. Thomas Williams does not belong in a general ward. He's a man of distinction. Then pay the bill, Amanda, I said from behind them. My mother spun around. Her eyes blazed. You, she spat. How dare you stand there? I'm just watching, Mom, I replied quietly. Your rich son-in-law forgot his wallet. Your wealthy daughter maxed out her cards. And you, well, we both know you don't have $50,000, right? My mother stepped toward me, hand raised as if to strike. Get out, she screamed. You came here to gloat. You came to watch us crumble. Leave my sight. I won't have your bad luck polluting the air around my husband. I met her raised hand without flinching. I can help, I said gently. My mother laughed a harsh, bitter sound. Help with what? Your food stamps? Coupons? Do you have $50,000 in your pocket, Zoe? I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the black titanium American Express card with a limit higher than their home's worth. I could pull it out right now, swipe it. End this nightmare. But then I glanced at Brad. He was sneering, sure I was bluffing. I looked at Chantel, staring with contempt, and at my mother, poised to lash out, needing a scapegoat for her own failures. If I paid now, they wouldn't learn a thing. They'd take the money, call it a miracle, and keep treating me like dirt. They'd assume I begged, borrowed, or stole it to earn their love. Not today. I withdrew my hand empty. No, I said, I don't have it. My mother scoffed, lowering her hand. Just as I thought, worthless, completely useless. Why did you even come to beg for gas money? To see if he left you anything in the will? I came to see my father, I said. Well, you can't, she snapped. Security? A guard near the entrance looked up. This woman is harassing us, my mother cried, pointing a manicured finger at me. She's trying to extort money from grieving family. Remove her. The guard approached us. You heard her, Brad said, stepping forward, emboldened now that a uniformed man was involved. Get lost, Zoe. Crawl back to your hole. I looked to the nurse. Please look after him, I said softly. We'll do our best, she replied kindly. I turned back to my mother. You're making a grave mistake, Amanda, I said. You're pushing away the only person truly here for him. I'm turning away a parasite, she screamed. Go. The guard placed a hand on my elbow. Ma'am, you need to leave. I shrugged him off gently. I'm leaving. And I walked away. She rested her hand on my elbow. Ma'am, you need to leave. I softly shrugged him away. I'm leaving. And I walked off. I left the ER, passing the vending machines where Brad was concealing his financial struggles and the spot where Chantel had snapped her selfie. I stepped out into the parking lot. My heart ached for my father. I knew he was hurting. I knew he was terrified. But I also knew that if I rescued him now, I would lose him forever to their deceit. I needed to break their hold to save him. I got into the SUV and paused for a moment, inhaling the scent of leather and cool air conditioning. Then I pulled out my phone and called hospital administration. This is Zoe Williams, I said when the director answered. I'm calling on behalf of the Williams family. Yes, Miss Williams. My father, Thomas Williams, is in the ER. I want to cover his care, the private room, the specialist, everything. Of course. How would you prefer to handle payment? I'll transfer the funds immediately, I said, but there's a condition. Anything. Do not tell my mother where the money is coming from, I said. Say it's from an anonymous donor. Say it's from a charity for the needy. Say whatever you want, but don't use my name. Understood. We can list it as a benevolent grant. Do it, I instructed, and make sure he's assigned your top neurologist. I hung up. Through the windshield, I watched the ambulance bay lights flicker red and white. I had just spent $50,000 to save a man too scared to speak with me. And I had done it in a way that would stab my mother right in the heart. She would believe it was charity. She would think she had charmed someone or that God had sent a miracle. She would never guess that the daughter she had cast out was the one keeping her husband alive. I shifted into drive. I'm not finished, I murmured to the empty car. I picked up the phone again and dialed Marcus. Did the foreclosure notice go through? I asked. Yoda Marcus replied. They have 48 hours to vacate. Good, I said. Now what about the cars? Brad's Porsche and Chantel's Tesla. Who holds the loans? We bought them an hour ago, Marcus said. They're in default. Repossess them. Tonight, while they're at the hospital, I want them to walk out of that ER and find their parking spots empty. Zoe, Marcus said, his tone hesitant. That's harsh. They're at the hospital. They didn't care when I was starving. Marcus, I said firmly, they didn't care when they stripped me of my dignity. I don't care about their convenience. Take the cars. I hung up and drove away. I left my father in the best care money could provide. And I left my mother and sister to a fate shaped by their own greed. They wanted a life of luxury they didn't earn. Fine. I was about to show them what happens when the credit card finally gets declined. The hospital was only the waiting room. The real operation was about to start, and I was going to excise the cancer from this family, even if I had to use a dull blade. The sound of a credit card being declined is unmistakable. It's a sharp, flat beep that signals the end of a fantasy. I stood near the ER waiting area entrance, concealed behind a large potted fern, watching the scene unfold at the payment desk. Brad was sweating through his designer shirt. He swiped the platinum card again. He tapped it. He inserted the chip. The outcome was always the same, that flat, humiliating beep followed by the red rejection light. Sir, the nurse said, her voice tight with patience. That sharp, humiliating beep was immediately followed by the glowing red decline signal. Sir, the nurse said, her voice strained but controlled. She clearly felt nothing. The card had been rejected for the third time. The code showed it was frozen by the issuer. Do you have another payment method? Brad stared at the card as if it had personally betrayed him. He let out a nervous laugh, a high-pitched sound that grated on my nerves. This is absurd. I just used this card for dinner. It has to be a fraud alert. I'm making a large payment at a hospital, so they locked it. Let me call them. He pulled out his phone. I watched him dial, knowing exactly what awaited him on the other end. An automated message informing him his accounts were under administrative review by Z Holdings. It was the sound of my boot pressing down on his throat. My mother, Amanda, pushed him aside. Give me the phone, Brad. You're too polite. I'll handle this. She snatched the phone and pressed it to her ear. I saw her expression shift from arrogant confidence to confusion, then to sheer, raw terror. She pulled the phone away and stared at the screen. It says the account doesn't exist, she whispered. Chantel gasped. Like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? That's the corporate card. That's where the funds are. The nurse sighed and typed on her computer. Mrs. Williams, I know this is difficult, but we need to transfer your husband. The neurosurgeon is waiting on the imaging, and we can't authorize the private suite or specialized team without the deposit. We do have a bed in the general ward, a shared room with 4 beds per bay. We can move him there immediately. No, my mother yelled. She slammed her hand on the counter. Thomas Williams does not share a room. He's a pillar of this community. Do you know who we are? We're the Williams family. We own Amanda Enterprises. The nurse remained unimpressed. Ma'am, right now you're a family with an uninsured patient in critical condition and no payment method. I'm trying to help you. Without the $50,000 deposit, we have to follow standard procedure. Amanda's eyes darted wildly around the room. She looked at Brad, who stared down at his shoes. Then she glanced at Chantel, who frantically checked her banking app, likely realizing her credit was drying up as well. Finally, her gaze landed on me. I had stepped out from behind the fern. I couldn't help it. Watching them fall apart was magnetic. You, Amanda, she hissed, pointing a trembling finger at me. This is your fault. You brought bad energy. You jinxed us. I stepped slowly toward the desk, avoiding her eyes and focusing on the nurse instead. Is he stable? I asked. The nurse looked at me, puzzled by the family drama, but relieved for a calm voice. He's sedated, but his vitals are unstable. We really need to complete those scans. I nodded and reached into my purse. My fingers brushed the cold metal of my phone. I could pay. I could pull out my card and end this now. I could be the savior, but if I did, they would win. They'd take my money and mock me afterward. They'd say I was coerced. I needed to save my father, yes, but I also needed to break them. I stepped back. I need to make a call, I said. My mother scoffed. Who are you calling? The welfare office? Get out of here, Zoe. Without $50,000, you're worthless to us. I walked away, turning the corner out of their sight, but close enough to hear their arguing. I dialed the number for the hospital foundation, hidden just out of view around the bend, but close enough to catch their heated exchange. I pulled out my phone and dialed the hospital foundation's direct line. This was the special number reserved for major donors, I'd called it before, to make secret contributions to children's wards in Chicago. This is a donor-designated gift, I informed the director on the other end. I'm transferring $50,000 right now. It's for Thomas Williams' medical care. There was a brief silence. Ms. Williams, is that you? Yes, I confirmed, but listen closely. My family is waiting in the lobby. They're difficult. You cannot disclose that this money came from me. If you mention my name, I will retract the funds. Do you understand? I understand, the director replied. We can record it as an emergency grant from the Samaritan Fund. It serves as an umbrella for anonymous donations. Excellent, I said. Let them know and get him moved to that suite immediately. I hung up, leaned against the cold hospital wall and closed my eyes. $50,000, a significant sum even for me, but it was the cost of saving my father's life and the price of my mother's ultimate disgrace. She would never realize that the daughter she wished dead was the very reason her husband was receiving the finest care available. After 2 minutes, I stepped back around the corner. The atmosphere at the reception had shifted. The nurse was on the phone and nodding. She ended the call and looked at my mother, the first genuine smile I'd seen on her face. "Mrs. Williams, I have excellent news," she announced. "We just got word from hospital administration. An anonymous donor has covered the deposit. The full $50,000 has been paid." My mother froze. She glanced at the nurse, then at Brad, then stared upward as if the heavens had just opened and showered them with money. "A donor?" she whispered. "An anonymous donor?" "Yes," the nurse confirmed. "It went through our Samaritan Fund. We can transfer Mr. Williams to the VIP suite right away. The neurosurgeon is already prepping." My mother let out a victorious cry. She grabbed Brad's arm. "Did you hear that? A donor? Someone recognized Thomas's name. Someone knew who we were and that we deserved this." She spun around, her face lit with a toxic blend of relief and pride. Then her gaze landed on me. The joy on her face twisted instantly into a sneer. "Did you hear that, Zoe?" she mocked. "God provides for the righteous. While you hid in the shadows doing nothing, a stranger stepped up. A complete stranger cared more about your father than you did." I stood silent, my expression unreadable. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it like metal and ash. "That's wonderful, Mom," I said flatly. "You must feel so relieved." "Relieved?" She laughed bitterly. "I am vindicated. This proves we command respect in this city. People know the Williams name. They know we're worthy, and you?" She stepped closer, eyes flashing with spite. "You are nothing," she spat. "You stood by and watched us struggle. You didn't even try to help. You just watched. A stranger is better than you. A stranger is better than my own daughter." I looked at her, the woman who had claimed credit for my money, my achievements, and now my compassion. She was wielding my generosity as a weapon against me. "You're right, Amanda," I said softly. "A stranger is better than me because a stranger doesn't know the truth about you." She waved me off dismissively. "Go away, Zoe. We're heading to the VIP suite. We don't need you. We never did. Go back to your little life and leave this to the important people." Chantel brushed past me, her nose raised in the air. Chantel brushed past me, her nose turned up, saying, "Your insignificant life? Leave that to the people who matter." "Goodbye, Zoe. Don't trip on your way out." Brad sneered behind them, relief clear on his face, as his financial blunders somehow went unnoticed. He didn't meet my gaze, too busy texting, probably tipping off his bookie about a fresh cash flow. I watched them trail the nurse through the double doors. My father was safe now. The doctors would handle him. He was tucked away in a private room overlooking the city, paid for by the daughter they wished never existed. But my mother, she was still standing, still proud, convinced she'd won, that the world had once again bent to her will. I turned toward the exit as automatic doors slid open, the heavy, humid air greeting me like an impending storm. I made my way to my car, settled into the driver's seat, and glanced up at the hospital looming above. Somewhere on the 10th floor, my family was settling into undeserved luxury, financed by a lie they were eager to accept. I grabbed my burner phone, my hand steadied. The sorrow and pity had vanished. Left was only cold, calculated resolve. "Marcus," I said when he picked up. "Zoe, did you make it to the hospital? Is Thomas all right?" "He's fine," I replied. "In the VIP suite. I covered it." "All right," Marcus said cautiously. "That's generous." "It's not generosity, Marcus," I said, starting the engine. "It's an investment. I need him alive to witness what's coming." "What's coming?" Marcus asked. I pulled out of the lot, passing the sign that read St. Jude's Hospital St. Jude, patron saint of lost causes. My family was a lost cause, and I was done hoping for miracles. "Begin the repossessions," I ordered. "Every last one." I confirmed. Brad's Porsche, Chantel's Tesla, and Marcus. "Yes, call the utility companies for the house electricity, water, gas. Everything's under the company's name, right?" "Yes, Amanda set it all up under the business to write it off as expenses." "Cut them off," I said. "Shut them all down. I want the house dark by the time they return from the hospital. I want them coming home to a cold, lifeless shell." "Zoe," Marcus said softly, This is war." "No, Marcus," I replied, merging onto the highway. "War means two sides battling. They're not fighting, they're drowning, and I'm the ocean." I drove toward the city as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples and reds. It was stunning. My mother once said a stranger was better than her own daughter. She was right. The daughter she knew, weak, pleading for love. That girl was gone. The stranger was here now, and she held the bank's power. Tonight, they'd celebrate their fortune in that hospital room, eat whatever the cafeteria served, telling themselves they were blessed, but tomorrow they'd find empty parking spots where their prized possessions once stood. They'd hail taxis they couldn't afford, returning to a house that would refuse to open its doors. I was no longer N. I wasn't holding back anymore. The gloves were off, and I had a fistful of debt notices ready to lend the blows. "It's time to collect," I whispered into the stillness of the car. "Time to collect everything." The sun rose over Buckhead with a fierce brightness that usually means disaster is near. It was a flawless Georgia morning. The sun climbed over Buckhead, blazing with a fierce intensity that usually warns of looming trouble. It was a flawless Georgia morning. The A-list blossomed, birds chirped, and the air carried the scent of wealth and pine. Inside the Williams family estate, my mother, Amanda, was likely enjoying the deep, undisturbed slumber of the self-assured. She had gone to bed convinced that divine intervention had settled her husband's hospital bill. She believed she had triumphed. She thought the crisis was over. Little did she know, the heart of the storm had just settled above her home. I wasn't present. Instead, I sat in my office at Z Holdings, watching a live stream from the security drone Marcus had launched. It hovered silently above the treetops, granting me a front row view of my verdict being carried out. At 8 a.m., the quiet of the cul-de-sac was broken by the grinding roar of diesel engines. Not one, but 3 tow trucks turned onto the street. They advanced like a heavy, relentless pack, their orange warning lights flashing against the pristine white pillars of the neighborhood. They pulled into my parents' circular driveway. One truck reversed beside Brad's Porsche Panamera. Another positioned itself in front of Chantel's white Tesla Model X. The third, a massive flatbed, blocked the exit. I saw the front door burst open. Brad dashed out, clad in silk boxers and the wrinkled sweat-stained dress shirt he'd worn to the hospital the day before. He looked terrified and helpless. "Hey!" he shouted, waving his arms wildly. "Hey, back off the car! What do you think you're doing?" The first tow truck driver, a burly man who looked like he ate gravel for breakfast, didn't even glance up. He was already attaching chains beneath the Porsche. "Repossession order," the driver muttered, tightening the winch. "Step back, sir. Repossession," Brad yelled, his voice breaking. "Do you know who I am? I'm the regional manager. That car's leased. It's paid through the company." "The company's accounts are frozen," the driver replied, pulling the lever. The winch groaned as the Porsche lifted, its wheels spinning uselessly in the air. "Payment default. The lender demands the asset. Next." Chantel rushed out. Wearing a silk robe with a sleep mask pushed up on her forehead, she screamed as she saw her Tesla hoisted onto the second truck likely waking dogs 3 streets away. "My car!" she cried. "Stop! That's my car! My purse is inside! My makeup is in there!" The second truck's driver paid no attention. He was busy securing the wheels. "Ma'am, please step away from the vehicle," he said flatly. "You can collect personal belongings at the impound lot downtown." Amanda appeared in the doorway, fully dressed as always, never allowing anyone to see her unguarded. Her face was pale. She scanned the trucks, then the neighbors' homes. "This is a mistake," she declared, projecting her voice toward the street. "A clerical error. We changed banks last week. But it was too late to control the narrative. The commotion had attracted onlookers." I zoomed the camera in. Across the street, Mrs. Gable stood on her porch with a cup of coffee. Mrs. Gable was president of the Homeowners Association and my mother's longtime rival. She thrived on gossip and scandal. And right now, she was watching the downfall of the Williams family in vivid detail. Amanda spotted her. She waved frantically, her smile tight and forced. "Just a misunderstanding, Martha," she said. Amanda caught sight of her and waved urgently, her grin tight and strained. "Just a mix-up, Martha," she said. Amanda called out, her voice sharp. "We're updating the fleet, trading them in." Mrs. Gable didn't respond with a wave. She simply sipped her coffee and observed as the Porsche was hauled up the ramp like a lifeless creature. Brad turned towards my mother, his face flushed, veins bulging in his neck. "You said you handled it," he yelled at her. "You said the accounts were only flagged. Why are they taking my car?" "Amanda, lower your voice," my mother whispered, gripping his arm. "The neighbors are watching." "I don't care about the neighbors." Brad shouted, shaking her off. "I care about my car. How am I supposed to get to work? How am I supposed to look like a manager if I'm riding the bus?" "You don't have a job, Brad," I muttered to the screen. Suddenly, a police car pulled up behind the tow trucks. A sheriff's deputy stepped out, adjusted his belt, and walked up the driveway holding a thick envelope. My mother stopped breathing. I could see her chest rise and fall. Deep down, she understood what that uniform signified. It wasn't a noise complaint. "Mrs. Amanda Williams?" the deputy asked. "Yes," she whispered. "I have a writ of possession for the property at 4500 Highland Drive," the deputy announced, his voice cutting through the morning air. "Foreclosure proceedings have been completed due to default on the commercial lien against the residents. You are served with an immediate eviction notice." "Eviction?" Chantel squealed. "Mom, what is he talking about?" "It's not true," Amanda shouted, retreating toward the door. "This house belongs to me. I've lived here for 3 decades. You can't just take it." "The bank owns it now, ma'am," the deputy replied calmly. "Z Holdings acquired the note and has exercised their right to immediate possession. You have 30 minutes to collect essential personal belongings and leave the premises. After that, the locks will be changed and anything left inside will be deemed abandoned." 30 minutes? Brad yelled. "Are you crazy? My suits are in there. My watch collection." "You'd better start packing then, sir," the deputy said, glancing at his watch. "Time is ticking." What came next was pure disorder. It was undignified. It was chaotic. It was everything my mother despised. They rushed into the house. I watched through the interior cameras as they darted from room to room. They weren't grabbing photo albums or keepsakes. They were grabbing valuables. Chantel was stuffing jewelry into a pillowcase. Brad was trying to cram his golf clubs into a duffel bag. Amanda was in her office, furiously shredding papers, trying to conceal proof of her failures even as the roof was being torn from above her. 20 minutes in, the arguments erupted. "This is your fault," Brad screamed from the hallway, dragging a bulging suitcase. "You told me the business was stable. You said I could use the credit line. I gave you everything," Amanda yelled back, emerging from the office with a box of files. "I bought you that car. I bought you that condo, and you threw it all away." "Don't pretend I don't know," Brad shouted. "I saw the withdrawals. You approved them. You were so desperate to have a successful son-in-law, you turned a blind eye. You wanted the image, Amanda. You wanted the facade. Well, here's the reality." He hurled a vase against the wall. It shattered. "Stop it!" Chantel cried, sitting on the stairs clutching a fur coat. "Stop fighting! Where will we go? We don't have cars." Chantel wept, perched on the staircase, clutching a fur coat to her chest. "Stop arguing. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have any cars." "We have nowhere else to turn. Call a hotel," Amanda snapped sharply. "Use the AMX." "The AMX is dead," Mother Chantel yelled. "They're all gone. We're broke. Time's up." A deputy's voice thundered from the foyer. "Everyone out now." They hauled their bags toward the door, resembling passengers fleeing a luxury cruise that had struck an iceberg. They stumbled onto the front porch, squinting in the bright sunlight. The tow trucks had vanished. The driveway was empty. Scattered across the lawn were remnants of their frantic escape. A shoe here, a scarf there. Mrs. Gable remained on her porch, but she was no longer alone. The neighbors next door, the Hendersons, had come outside. A jogger paused to watch. A landscaping crew had switched off their leaf blowers to witness the scene. Amanda Williams, the queen of the cul-de-sac, stood on her front steps clutching a box of tax documents, dressed in a Chanel suit but looking like a beggar. She locked eyes with Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable raised her coffee mug in a mock salute before retreating indoors, closing the door with a click that echoed down the street. The deputy secured the front door of my childhood home, placing a bright orange sticker on the wood. "Foreclosed property of Z Holdings. Here are the keys for the new lockbox," the deputy told the property manager who had just arrived. "No one may enter without the owner's permission." My mother grabbed the deputy's arm. "Who owns this? Who's doing this to us? I want a name. I want to take legal action." "It's a holding company, ma'am," the deputy replied, gently removing her hand from his uniform. "Z Holdings. Now please leave the property. You are trespassing." They descended the driveway, dragging their heavy suitcases over the cobblestones. The wheels clattered loudly. They stood on the curb, on the public sidewalk, a place where they had no control. Brad pulled out his phone. "I'm calling an Uber," he muttered. "Uber?" Chantel exclaimed. "To where?" "I don't know," Brad snapped. "A motel, anywhere." He checked the app, then cursed. Surge pricing. It was $50 to the nearest Motel 6. "I only have 20 in my account." He looked at Amanda. "You pay for it." I can't access my accounts," Amanda stammered. "So we're stuck," Chantel shrieked. "We're homeless and stranded on the sidewalk like vagabonds." Brad stared at Amanda, his eyes cold. He dropped his suitcase. "You know what?" he said. "I'm done." "What do you mean?" Amanda asked. "I mean, I'm done with this family," Brad said. "I married in because I thought there was money. I thought there was status, but it's all a facade. You're a fraud, Amanda, and your daughter is a spoiled brat with no sense." "Brad," Chantel gasped. "How can you say that?" "It's easy," Brad said. "I'm leaving. I have a friend in Buckhead. I can crash on his couch. You two figure it out." He began walking away, leaving his suitcase behind. "Brad, come back," Chantel screamed, chasing after him. "You can't leave me. I'm your wife." "Get away from me," Brad shouted, pushing her back. She stumbled and fell onto the grass. He didn't look back. He kept walking down the street, a man abandoning a sinking ship. Chantel sat on the grass, sobbing. Amanda stood over her, staring at the orange sticker on the door. She looked small. She looked old. The sunlight caught the sequins on her jacket, but they no longer shimmered. They just looked cheap. I watched everything from my office. I watched the empire fall apart. I watched the rats turn on one another. From my office, I observed it all, and the empire collapsing piece by piece, the schemers turning against each other in chaos. I grabbed my phone. "Marcus," I said. "Yes, Zoe," he answered. "Did the neighbors witness everything?" "Every moment," Marcus confirmed. "Mrs. Gable was streaming it live on Facebook." "Excellent," I replied. "Now send the message." "What message?" "The one to Amanda's church email," I instructed. "Tell her the CEO of Z Holdings wants to meet. Mention we might consider a restructuring proposal." "You're offering them help?" Marcus asked, surprised. "No," I said, swiveling my chair. "I'm inviting them straight into the lion's den. I want to look them in the eye and reveal who truly controls their lives. Arrange the meeting for tomorrow. And Marcus, yes, have security admit them, but make them wait in the lobby. No water, no coffee, just wait." I ended the call and stared at my reflection on the darkened screen. No longer victim, I looked every bit the CEO. They were out there on the street broken, yet clueless about the punchline. Unaware that the very hand pushing them down was the same one they'd slapped away for nearly 3 decades. Tomorrow they would understand. And tomorrow, I would finally celebrate my triumph. The sidewalk outside the house that once belonged to my mother was no place to linger. I sat comfortably in my climate-controlled office, watching the surveillance feed on my tablet, sipping Earl Grey tea as my family unraveled on the pavement below. Brad had vanished, a coward melting into the city's shadows, that left Amanda and Chantel perched on their Louis Vuitton suitcases like dethroned royalty, waiting for a carriage that would never arrive. After an hour, Amanda's phone buzzed. It was the only notification she'd received that day, not tied to debt collectors or foreclosure notices. It was the email Marcus had sent to her church account, the one she used to coordinate bake sales and gossip about the choir. I zoomed in on the camera feed. I saw my mother raise her phone, squinting against the unforgiving sun. Her lips moved as she read the subject. Urgent asset restructuring and settlement negotiations, Z Holdings. She gasped, clutching Chantel's arm. I could almost hear the flicker of desperate hope in her chest. "Look," Amanda whispered through the microphone, voice trembling. "It's an email from the company. From the CEO's office." Chantel grabbed the phone. "What does it say?" "They want to meet," Amanda said, standing and brushing off her skirt. "They're proposing a restructuring plan." I knew right then this was a misstep. No bank seizes a $2 million property without first negotiating. This had to be a glitch or a rogue employee. A rogue employee. I smiled into my teacup. They were getting warmer, but still miles from the truth. "Wait," Chantel said, frowning at the screen. "Z Holdings? Didn't Zoe say she got a job in finance?" "Something about equity," Amanda scoffed bitterly. Zoe, she's probably just a receptionist or janitor. She lied about her salary, obviously. But maybe she works there. Maybe she's the one who caused this mess. The story took shape in their minds immediately. It was easier to believe I was incompetent than powerful. To them, I was just a resentful low-level clerk who filed the wrong paperwork to ruin them. They were viewed as inept rather than influential. To them, I was merely the bitter, low-ranking clerk who had submitted the wrong documents and derailed their schemes. Now, the kindly male CEO, because in Amanda's mindset, authority was always masculine, had spotted the error and wanted to make amends. "We have to go there," Amanda declared, gripping her suitcase handle. "We need to head straight to headquarters and set this straight. I will insist they dismiss her. I will see to it she never works in this city again." Chantel glanced around the deserted street. "How do we get there, Mom? The cars are gone. Brad's gone. Uber wants $50 and my cards are declined." Amanda rummaged through her purse. She sifted past the overdrawn credit cards, beyond the lipstick, past the keys to a home she couldn't enter. She pulled out a tiny coin pouch. "I have some cash," she said with confidence. She emptied the contents into her palm. It was pitiful, a few crumpled bills and some loose change, maybe $12 total. Chantel looked at the money. "That won't cover an Uber to Buckhead." "Then we'll take the bus," Amanda declared, lifting her chin. "The bus?" Chantel gasped. "Mom, I'm wearing Jimmy Choo's. I'm not stepping onto a bus with all those people. Do you want your Tesla back or not?" Amanda snapped. "We do what's necessary. We are survivors, Chantel. We are fighters." They weren't fighters. They were leeches who had exhausted their resources. Yet I watched them drag their heavy designer bags down the street toward the bus stop on the main road. It was a mile's walk in heels. I switched to the city traffic cameras. I tracked them standing at the stop, surrounded by the very people they had spent their lives looking down upon. A woman juggling 3 grocery bags, a man in a construction vest, a student with headphones, and there in the middle, Amanda Williams, in her Chanel suit, clutching her pearls like the very air might snatch them away. When the bus pulled up, the driver didn't lower the ramp for their luggage. Why would he? They appeared able-bodied. I watched them struggle to hoist the bags up the steps, holding up the line. The driver shouted something. Amanda shouted back. Then came the moment of truth, the fare. Amanda tried to insert a $5 bill into the fare slot. The machine rejected it. It required exact change or a transit card. "Move it, lady," someone shouted from the back. "I don't have change," Amanda yelled, her calm unraveling. "Can't you just take the 5? Keep the change. I'm in a hurry." "We don't give change," the driver said, his expression bored. $2.50 each, coins or card." Amanda looked at Chantel. Chantel looked at her shoes. They had to step off the bus. I watched my mother, the woman who once spent $1,000 on a floral arrangement because the pink was too harsh, turn to a stranger on a nearby bench. "Excuse me," she said, her voice strained. "Do you have change for a 5? The man looked her over. He glanced at her suit. He eyed her luggage. Then he laughed. "Sorry, rich lady, I'm tapped out." They missed that bus, and the next. They had to walk 3 blocks to a gas station just to buy gum and break the bill. I saw Chantel limping. I saw a blister forming on her heel. I noticed the sweat dripping down Amanda's forehead, ruining her perfectly styled hair. It took them 2 hours to reach Buckhead. 2 hours of transfers, standing, being jostled. 2 hours as reality crashed down on them. When they finally arrived at the Sovereign building, they looked utterly spent, their clothes wrinkled, their hair frizzed by the humidity. At last they reached the Sovereign Tower, utterly drained. Their clothes were creased, and humidity had left their hair wild and frizzy. Chantel carried her shoes in hand. Together they stood at the skyscraper's base, gazing upward. The sun gleamed off the glass facade, dazzling their eyes. This was my stronghold. This was the empire Zoe had created. Yet to them, we were mere ants at the entrance. They pushed through the revolving doors into the lobby. A blast of cool air hit them, and I noticed them shiver. Approaching the security desk, they tried hard to mask their nerves with an air of confidence. "I'm here to meet with the CEO of Z Holdings," Amanda declared, slamming her palm on the marble counter. "I have an appointment." The guard, Henry, whom I had briefed earlier that morning, peeked over his spectacles. No smile, no offer to take their bags. "Name?" Henry inquired. "Amanda Williams," she replied. "This is my daughter. We're expected. It's an urgent restructuring issue." Henry scanned his list carefully, running his finger down the page, flipping it, then consulting the computer. He made them stand there for a full 3 minutes, typing deliberately. "I don't see an appointment," Henry finally said. "What?" Amanda snapped. "Check again. I have the email. Look." She thrust her phone toward him. Henry recoiled. "Ma'am, step back," he warned. Examining the phone, he said, Z Holdings. The executive offices are on the 45th floor. However, security protocol requires confirmation from the executive assistant. You'll need to wait here while I make the call." "Fine," Amanda grumbled. "Call and tell them Mrs. Williams is here. Request someone to bring down our bags." Henry picked up the phone and dialed my extension. I let it ring endlessly. From my office, I watched them through the lobby camera. They shifted uneasily. Chantel leaned against the wall, rubbing her foot. Amanda paced, checking her reflection in the glass, trying to tame her hair. "They look parched," Marcus remarked, standing beside me. "They do," I agreed. Henry hung up. "No answer," he informed them. "They must be in a meeting." "We'll wait," Amanda said firmly. "We're not leaving." "You can wait," Henry replied, "but you can't block the doorway. Please take a seat over there." He pointed toward a bench tucked in a distant corner, far from the plush leather chairs reserved for actual clients. It was a hard wooden bench near the restrooms. Amanda eyed the sofas. "Can't we sit there?" "Reserved," Henry said firmly. "Please move along." They dragged their bags to the wooden bench, sat down, and waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. I watched them closely the entire time. I saw Chantal try to connect to the building Wi-Fi, only to find it password protected. I saw Amanda attempt to stop a passing businessman, to ask for the time, only to be ignored. I witnessed their entitlement slowly fade, replaced by a dull, gnawing hunger and thirst. By noon, Chantal returned to the security desk. "Excuse me," she said, flashing a smile that once earned her free drinks. "Is there a water fountain or coffee? We're really thirsty." "There's a Starbucks across the street," Henry replied without looking up. "We don't have our wallets," Chantal stammered. "Could we just get some water from the office cooler?" "This isn't a charity, ma'am," Henry said. "Building policy. No badge, no access to amenities." Chantal trudged back to the bench, defeated. Amanda slapped her arm, whispering sharply, probably blaming her for not trying harder. 3 hours. I made them wait for 3 hours. She struck her arm sharply and whispered with a harsh tone, likely accusing her of not putting in enough effort. 3 hours. I kept them waiting for 3 whole hours. While they went hungry, I ate my lunch. While their throats grew parched, I sipped sparkling water. I replied to emails. I managed my company. Finally, at 1:30, I pressed the intercom button. "Henry," I said, "send them up." "Right away, Miss Williams." I watched as Henry beckoned them over. "The CEO is ready to see you now," he announced. Amanda sprang up, smoothing her skirt. About time she lost her patience. "That secretary should be fired, making us wait like animals." They stepped into the elevator. I observed the floor numbers rising, 10, 20, 30, 40. They fixed their hair, replaced their masks, and readied themselves to impress the executive upstairs. They were prepared to betray me to save their own skins. In the elevator, Amanda leaned toward Chantal. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "When we're inside, you start crying. Tell him your sister is unstable mentally. Say she stole your identity to submit those forms. We pin everything on Zoe. If we play it right, we get the house back and a settlement." "I'm ready, Mom," Chantal replied, pinching her cheeks to add a flush of color. The elevator chimed at the 45th floor. The doors slid open. They stepped onto the plush carpet of my territory. I rose from my desk and walked to the door of the conference room adjacent to my office. I signaled Marcus to open the main doors. The moment had arrived. They entered the reception area. My assistant, Sarah, looked up. "Mrs. Williams?" Sarah inquired. "Yes," Amanda said, striding past her. "Where is he? Where's the CEO?" "Through those doors," Sarah responded, pointing toward the double mahogany doors at the corridor's end. Amanda didn't knock. She didn't pause. She flung open the doors and marched in, with Chantel close behind. "Mr. CEO," Amanda declared, her voice echoing, "I am Amanda Williams, and I demand an explanation for this outrage. My daughter's Zoe. She's just a low-level employee here, and she has clearly—" She abruptly stopped. The room was enormous. The table stretched long, and at its head, in a tall leather chair, sat a woman. I slowly swiveled the chair around. I rested my elbows on the table, fingers steepled. I gazed at my mother. I looked at my sister. "Hello, Mother," I said. Amanda dropped her purse. Chantel clutched the doorframe for support. "Zoe," Amanda whispered, "what are you doing in here? You're supposed to be cleaning. Get out. The CEO is coming." I remained still. I didn't smile. "I am the CEO, Amanda," I said, "as Z Holdings." Z for Zoe. "No," Amanda stammered, retreating. "No, that can't be. You're unemployed, a failure. You clip coupons." "I hold a doctorate," I corrected her, "and I have your mortgage, your car loans, and your business debts." I picked up a file from the table and tossed it toward them. It slid across the polished wood and stopped just inches from Amanda's hand. "Sit down," I commanded. "We have a lot to cover, and I'm charging you interest by the minute." The security monitors in my office displayed the lobby 45 floors below. I sat entranced, watching the final cast of this drama gather on the stage I had constructed for them. My mother and sister were huddled on a hard wooden bench near the restrooms, looking like survivors of a fashion disaster. They nursed sore feet and checked their phones every half minute, hoping for a rescue that wasn't coming. Then the revolving doors spun, and Brad entered. I leaned forward in my leather chair. I had wondered if he'd come. The revolving doors spun around as Brad stepped inside. I leaned forward in my leather chair, doubting whether he'd actually come. After ditching his wife and mother-in-law on the sidewalk, he'd bolted like a rat, abandoning a sinking ship. But rats are predictable. They always return where they think the cheese is. Amanda must have messaged him about the meeting. She probably told him the CEO of Z Holdings wanted to negotiate. And Brad, ever the opportunist, sensed a chance to strike a deal. He likely believed he could charm this elusive CEO, throw Amanda and Chantel under the bus, and walk away with a job or a settlement. He tried to clean himself up, wearing a fresh shirt, probably bought with his last few bucks, or borrowed from a friend. But he couldn't shake the desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. He swaggered through the lobby, scanning until his gaze landed on Amanda and Chanté. I turned up the volume on the surveillance feed. "Well, look who finally decided to show," Chantel spat, standing on her aching feet. "You coward! You left us stranded on the street." Brad raised his hands, palms out, in a fake gesture of peace. "I went to get legal advice, babe. I was trying to find a solution, and see, I was right. This meeting is our way out. I told you it was a mistake. They realized they messed with the wrong people." He adjusted his tie, glancing around the lobby with contempt. Amanda stood, clutching her purse, relieved to see any man, even one who'd failed her so spectacularly. In her world, a man's presence meant authority. She needed Brad to be the spokesperson because she still believed business was a language only men could speak fluently. "You better fix this, Brad," she whispered sharply. "You do the talking. Tell them who we are. Tell them we're ready to sue for emotional distress." "Watch and learn," Brad said with a smirk. He walked up to the security desk. Henry, the guard I'd personally briefed, sat there reading a newspaper. He didn't look up as Brad approached. "Excuse me," Brad said, knocking his knuckles on the marble counter. His voice was loud and meant to carry. "I'm Brad Miller, regional manager and lead consultant for Amanda Enterprises. I believe my associates have already checked in, but I'm here to facilitate the meeting with your CEO." Henry turned a page of his newspaper. "Your name's not on the list, sir." Brad laughed, a short, disbelieving chuckle. "Check again, buddy. We got an urgent email. This is a high-level restructuring negotiation. I don't expect someone in a uniform to grasp corporate finance intricacies, but I suggest you pick up that phone and tell your boss Mr. Miller is here to solve his problem." Henry peered over his glasses, locking eyes with Brad for a long, uncomfortable beat. "I know who you are," Henry said. "You're the guy who had his Porsche towed this morning. I saw it on Facebook." Brad's face flushed a bright red that clashed sharply with the lobby's neutral tones. Amanda gasped. "That was an illegal tow." Brad stammered, his arrogance fading. "And it will be rectified soon. Now, are you going to let us in, or do I need to add your job to the list of things I'm taking today?" "You can take a seat," Henry said, nodding toward the wooden bench where Amanda and Chantel waited. "The CEO is in a meeting. You'll wait until you're called. And sir, if you tap my desk again, I'll have you removed for aggressive behavior. You'll remain seated until your name is called. And sir, if you tap on my desk again, I'll have you escorted out for hostile conduct." Brad opened his mouth to protest, but Henry simply reached for his radio. Brad snapped his mouth shut. He turned away, straightening his jacket, pretending it was his choice to wait. "He's finishing up a call," Brad said to Amanda and Chantel loud enough for others in the lobby to overhear. "He asked us to hold on for a few minutes." A power play. Typical. Two can play that game. He took a seat on the bench, stretched out his legs, crossed his ankles, trying to appear at ease. And so they waited. I made them wait for 3 hours. I sat in my office, eating a grilled salmon salad, watching them fade on the monitor. The first hour passed in silent frustration. They checked their watches, they sighed. They shot daggers at the security guard. They were certain a personal assistant would appear any moment, bearing apologies and sparkling water. The second hour brought physical discomfort. The bench was rigid, backless, and unyielding. Chantal shivered from the air conditioning. Amanda's stomach growled loudly enough to be picked up by the microphone. They hadn't eaten since breakfast, and it was well past 2 p.m. "I'm thirsty," Chantal pleaded. "Brad, get us some water." Brad glanced at the security desk. "They won't give us any. No amenities allowed." "There must be a water fountain," Amanda snapped. "Go find one." "I'm not wandering around looking for a fountain," Brad retorted. "I'm conserving my energy for the negotiation. You go." "I'm wearing heels," Amanda said, "and I'm 60 years old." They argued. They blamed each other. They turned on one another like trapped rats. It was mesmerizing to observe. The facade of a happy, successful family crumbled to revealing only raw selfishness and hunger. By the third hour, they were defeated. They slouched over, heads in hands. The arrogance was gone. The indignation was gone. They were just thirsty, exhausted people who realized they held no power here. They were not the customers. They were the commodity. At 3:15, I pressed the intercom button. "Henry," I said, "send them up." I watched Henry pick up the phone at the desk, then glance toward the bench. He waved his hand. "You can head up now," Henry called without standing. "45th floor." They jumped to their feet. They tried to fix their hair, smoothed out wrinkles in their clothes. They looked pitiful. Brad buttoned his jacket, attempting to reclaim his confidence, but his eyes flickered nervously. "Remember," Amanda whispered as they approached the elevators, "let Brad speak. We're angry, but open to a settlement. We want the house back and compensation." "We've got this," Brad said, cracking his knuckles. "Just follow my lead." I watched them step into the elevator. I watched the floor numbers rise. I stood from my desk and walked over to the mirror in the corner of my office. I checked my reflection. I appeared calm. I appeared powerful. I looked nothing like the girl they had discarded. I entered the conference room. It was a vast space dominated by a 20-foot reclaimed mahogany table. The view behind the head of the table was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of the city they believed was theirs. I took the chairman's seat at the head of the table. I placed a single file folder before me. I folded my hands. The heavy double doors swung open. My assistant Sarah stood there, looking professional and stern. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Williams, and Ms. Williams are here to see you, ma'am," she announced. They entered. "Ma'am, Mr. Miller, Mrs. Williams, and Ms. Williams have arrived to see you," she announced. They stepped inside. Brad strode ahead, chest swollen with confidence, ready to dazzle and dominate. Amanda followed, her chin raised high in a fragile show of pride. Chantel lingered behind, eyes wide and eager as she absorbed the lavish surroundings. Mr. CEO Brad's voice thundered as he extended his hand upon reaching the far side of the table. "Thank you for finally making time for us. I'm Brad Miller, and I believe we've started off on the wrong foot. I'm confident we can come to a mutually advantageous agreement regarding—" He abruptly stopped. He was 10 feet from me. Until that moment, he had been admiring the room, oblivious to the artwork or the woman seated before him. Now he looked up. His hand dropped, mouth agape. A sound like air escaping a tire hissed from him. Amanda nudged his back sharply. "Move, Brad," she snapped, stepping past him. "We haven't got all day, sir. I'm Amanda Williams, and I demand to know why." She faltered, her gaze fixed. She blinked rapidly, as if her contacts were failing. She stepped forward, then back. Chantel peeked around her mother's shoulder. "Is that," she whispered, "is that Zoe?" The room fell into a suffocating silence, heavy with finality. I did not smile, nor did I frown. I simply regarded them, my expression as unyielding as stone. "Hello, Mother," I said softly, though in the perfect acoustics of the room my voice thundered. Amanda grasped the back of a chair for support. Her complexion shifted from gray to pale to a blotchy red. "Zoe," she gasped, What are you doing here? Did you get a job here? Is that it? You're the secretary." She glanced toward the door, frantic, as if expecting a suited man to enter and reclaim the grand chair. "Stand up!" Brad suddenly barked, finding his voice. "Get out of that chair, Zoe. The CEO is on his way. Do you want to get fired? Do you realize how much trouble we're in? We can't have you embarrassing us now." He lunged toward me, reaching as if to seize my arm and pull me out. "Security," I said calmly, voice steady. Two large men in dark suits emerged from the shadows at the room's corners. They moved swiftly. One intercepted Brad, twisting his wrist behind his back. Brad yelped sharply as he was pushed into a chair. "Sit down, Brad," I ordered, "and keep your hands to yourself." Amanda screamed, "What's happening? Who are these men? Zoe, tell them to stop. We're here to see the owner." "You're seeing the owner, Amanda," I replied. Rising slowly, I pressed a button on the table. The blinds behind me lowered slightly, dimming the glare and casting long shadows across the room. "I am Z Holdings," I declared. "Z for Zoe. I own this building, I own this company, and as of yesterday morning, I own you." "No," Amanda whispered, shaking her head. "No, that can't be. You're a failure. You have nothing. You're a disappointment." "I'm the one who just bought your mortgage," I said. "I'm the one who seized your cars. I'm the one who froze your bank accounts." I picked up a file folder and slid it across the gleaming table. It spun perfectly, stopping before my mother. "Open it," I instructed. Amanda stared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. She hesitated. "Open it," I commanded, my tone sharp as a whip. She flinched but unfolded the folder. Her hands trembled violently, making the papers rattle. "It's a list," I said. "A list of every penny you owe." Her hands shook uncontrollably, causing the papers to shiver. "This is a record," I said. "A record of every single cent you owe. Every loan you secured to support a lifestyle beyond your means. Every dollar Brad embezzled from the company funds. Every deceit you spun to conceal it all." I paced slowly around the table, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. I stopped behind Brad. He was trembling, sweat soaking through his shirt. "And you, Brad," I whispered close to his ear. "I'm aware of the pawn shop. I know about the emerald necklace." Brad jerked back sharply. "You can't prove that." I pulled the necklace from my pocket. The emeralds shimmered cold and green as they caught the light. I let it drop with a heavy thud onto the table before him. "I bought it back," I stated, "and I have the footage of you selling it. Grand theft, Brad. Stealing from your wife to pay off a bookie. That's 5 to 10 years behind bars." Chantel let out a choked sob. She looked at the necklace, then at Brad. "You stole my necklace, the one Grandma left us." "He stole your future, Chantel," I said, stepping to stand behind my sister. "He robbed you of your inheritance. He took away your security. And our mother allowed it because she preferred having a white son-in-law over a financially stable business." Amanda glanced up from the papers. Her eyes were moist, but there was no sorrow, only fear. "Zoe," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "Zoe, darling, please, we're family. You can't do this. We made mistakes, I admit. We were harsh on you, but this is tearing us apart." I returned to the head of the table and sat down. I looked at the three of them. The mother who wished I were gone, the sister who mocked my pain, the brother-in-law who treated me with contempt. "You destroyed yourselves," I said. "I'm just cleaning up the wreckage." I leaned forward. "Now," I said, "let's discuss the conditions of your surrender. Because right now, the only thing keeping you out of jail is the daughter you wished had never been born, and I'm not feeling very merciful today." The emerald necklace rested on the mahogany table like a coiled green serpent. It symbolized Brad's betrayal, but it was only the beginning. I watched him stare at it. His face glistened with sweat, his eyes flicking from the jewelry to Chantal and then to me. He opened his mouth to speak, to weave another one of his intricate lies, but the atmosphere was too tense for his usual fabrications to survive. "That's not what it looks like," Brad stammered, his voice breaking. I was taking it for an appraisal to update insurance. Amanda asked me to. Remember, Amanda, we discussed revising the policy." My mother looked at him. For the first time, the blinders fell from her eyes. She saw the man she had supported, the man she had placed at the head of her table, the man who had belittled her own daughter, and she saw a thief. "I never authorized you to take that necklace," Amanda whispered. "It was in my safe deposit box. How did you even get the key?" "He stole it, Mom," Chantal said, voice shaky. "He took it from your room while we were packing. I saw him coming out of your closet. He claimed he was searching for boxes." Brad turned on Chantal, his face contorted in anger. "Shut up, Chantal. You don't know what you're talking about." "I'm trying to save us here," I said calmly. "You're trying to save yourself." I reached for the folder again and flipped past the page about the necklace. With a steady voice, I stated, "You're trying to protect yourself." I reached for the folder once more and skipped past the page detailing the necklace. But the jewelry was minor theft compared to what followed. "Brad, let's discuss the consulting fees." I produced a spreadsheet, color-coded, showing monthly payments from Amanda Enterprises to a firm named Zenith Consulting Group, $15,000 each month. I read aloud, "For the past 2 years, that's close to $400,000 Amanda has paid this consulting company for strategic advice." Amanda clutched her pearls, nodding silently. "Yes," Brad replied. "We claimed we needed external experts to update the business. Zenith was top-notch." I turned to Brad. His grip on the armrest was so tight his knuckles turned white. "Care to explain who owns Zenith Consulting, Brad?" I asked, "or should I?" He remained silent, breathing in short, shallow gasps. I slid a document across the table, the incorporation papers for Zenith Consulting. "It's registered at a residential address in Nevada," I said, "an address linked to a Mr. Bradley Miller." Chantal snatched the paper, eyes fixed on it. This is your old apartment before we met." "Exactly," I confirmed that. "There are no experts, no real strategy, just Brad funneling your mother's hard-earned money into his personal slush fund." "Where is the money?" Amanda shouted, standing and knocking over her chair. $400,000, Brad. "Where is it? Did you invest it? Is it in a savings account?" Brad recoiled. I put it into cryptocurrency. It's just down right now. The market's unstable. It'll bounce back." "It's not in crypto," I said, flipping through the file to reveal a series of bank statements. They weren't from investment firms. They showed transactions at online casinos, sports betting sites, and a particularly notable recurring payment to a high-end escort service in Miami. "You're a gambler, Brad," I said, "betting on horses, playing online poker, and apparently spending $3,000 a night on companions during your extended business trips." Chantal gasped like a wounded animal. She clutched the statements, scrutinizing the dates. "Miami," she whispered hoarsely. "You said you were at a logistics conference there. You said you were networking." "I was," Brad yelled. "Networking includes entertainment." "Entertainment?" I asked, pointing to a specific charge. "Is Sapphire Entertainment the Diamond Club? Because according to these credit card records, you spent Ma'am's payroll money on bottle service and private dances while Chantal was home posting about how much she missed you." Chantal stared at Brad. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with shock. "You cheated on me," she whispered. "With escorts." Brad stood abruptly, slamming his hands on the table. "This is illegal," he shouted, finger trembling as he pointed at me. "You hacked my accounts. This evidence is invalid. You can't use this." "I hold a debt, Brad," I replied, voice cold as ice. "That gives me the right to review the debtor's financial records, and since you mixed personal fraud with company funds, everything is fair game. I didn't hack you, I audited you, and you failed." I looked at my mother. She had slumped back in her chair, appearing small and defeated. The golden son she idolized was nothing more than a parasite feeding on her vanity for years. "He deceived you, Amanda," I said. "He saw a woman desperate to appear successful and sold her a lie." "He tricked you, Amanda," I told her. "He spotted a woman eager to appear successful and sold her a fantasy." He fed you the lies you wanted to believe while draining your finances. And you let him because he was charming, because he was white, because he wasn't me. Amanda hid her face in her hands. I didn't realize, she sobbed. I swear, Zoe, I didn't realize. Ignorance comes at a price, I said, and right now that price must be paid. Brad scanned the room, toward the door, the window, calculating his chances. Then he understood he had none. The walls were closing in, foreclosure, repossession, fraud uncovered. His life was collapsing. Then the facade shattered completely. The suave, arrogant executive disappeared, replaced by a trapped, furious beast. He roared in pure fury, grabbed the heavy glass water pitcher from the table's center and hurled it at me. It missed my head by inches, smashing against the wall behind me, showering the fine carpet with glass and water. You bitch, Brad bellowed. He lunged across the table, scrambling over the polished wood, reaching for my throat. You ruined everything. You jealous, ugly little... I'll kill you, Amanda screamed. Chantel stood frozen. I didn't move. I didn't flinch because I knew what Brad didn't. I knew who was lurking in the shadows. Before Brad's fingers could grasp my blazer, a huge hand clamped onto his shoulder. One of the security guards, a former linebacker named Marcus, hired for his seriousness, yanked Brad backward. Brad flew through the air, crashing onto the floor with a bone-jarring thud. Before he could rise, the second guard knelt on his back and twisted his arm behind him with force. Get off me, Brad howled, thrashing on the carpet. Do you know who I am? We know exactly who you are, the guard grunted, tightening his grip. You're the guy about to go to jail for assault. I rose slowly and circled the table. My heels clicked steadily on the floor amidst the chaos. I stopped before Brad. His cheek pressed against the carpet, panting, spitting. He looked up at me with one wild, furious eye. You're finished, Zoe, he spat. When I get out, I'm coming for you. I crouched close enough to catch the scent of fear on him. It was sour and sharp. You're not coming for anyone, Brad, I said quietly. Because you're heading away for a very long time. Embezzlement, grand theft, fraud, and now attempted assault. My lawyers are going to bury you in so much paperwork. You'll need a shovel to see daylight. I reached into my blazer pocket. My fingers brushed against a piece of paper I'd held onto for 3 months, wrinkled, stained with a drop of red wine from the night at the restaurant. I pulled it out. Do you recognize this? I asked, holding it up to his face. Brad squinted, stopped struggling, eyes locking on the paper. It was the coupon Save-A-Lot supermarket, 20% off frozen dinners. His face slackened. You gave this to me, I said. You tossed it on the table and said it was a leg up. You told me to stretch my dollars. You laughed at me. I folded the coupon carefully and slipped it into the breast pocket of his shirt, right over where his heart thumped a frantic, terrified beat. I'm returning the favor, I said. You're going to need this where you're going. I hear commissary prices are high. This should help you buy some ramen noodles in prison. This is your destination. I've heard that commissary prices are steep. This should help you grab some instant noodles behind bars. Brad locked eyes with me. The fight drained from him. He sank to the floor, defeated by a simple piece of paper. Get him out of here, I instructed the guards. The cops are waiting in the lobby. Wait, Chantel shouted, rushing toward him. Brad glanced at her, not with regret, but hatred. Don't touch me, you fool, he spat. If you weren't so obsessed with your dumb Instagram, maybe you'd have realized I was robbing you blind. You deserve this. Chantel recoiled, as if struck. She stood frozen, watching as the guards hauled Brad up and dragged him toward the exit. The confident swagger was gone. His steps were heavy. A broken man led to his fate. The double doors swung open. 2 uniformed officers waited in reception. They took Brad, cuffed him, and led him away. The doors shut. Silence returned to the conference room. Only the 3 of us remained, me, my mother, and my sister. Amanda trembled. She glanced at the empty seat Brad had occupied, the shattered glass scattered on the floor, and the pile of evidence on the table. Then slowly she met my gaze. Her eyes brimmed with fear. She understood Brad was just the appetizer, a soft target, but she was the main course. I returned to the head of the table and sat in my leather chair. I swiveled to face them. Now, I said, my voice resonating in the spacious room, let's discuss you, Mother. The woman who wished I had never been born. Amanda swallowed hard. She tried to straighten her back, to summon some of that matriarchal strength, but it was gone. She was nothing more than an old woman in a worn suit without money or a home. "Zoe," she stammered, her voice shaking. We are family. You can't let them take the house. Where will we go?" I leaned back, crossing my legs. "That sounds like a question for someone who exists," I replied. "But remember, you told me Zoe Williams doesn't exist, so I suppose you're addressing the bank and the bank doesn't care where you sleep." I picked up the final file, the thickest one. "This is the foreclosure timeline. I said you have 48 hours, but since you're already here with your luggage, I think we can speed things up." I pressed the intercom. "Sarah," I said, "cancel my afternoon meetings. I'm going to be busy taking out the trash." The elevator doors slid closed, muffling my mother's sobs. And just like that, the atmosphere in the conference room cleared. It was over. The years of torment, a lifetime of feeling small, the endless cycle of seeking approval from those incapable of giving it all finished. I sat there for a long time, gazing at the signed deed before me. The paper was still warm from their touch, but the ink had dried. I owned their past and I had erased their future. Marcus re-entered the room, his expression grave. He did not celebrate. He understood the cost. He walked to the table and picked up the emerald necklace Brad had left behind. He gently placed it in a velvet pouch and set it beside my hand. "Security has escorted them out," Marcus said quietly. "They're waiting at the bus stop." Mrs. Williams asked for cab fare. Henry refused. I nodded. It was harsh. It was cruel. And it was exactly what they would have done to me. In truth, it was what they had done to me. They left me with nothing but a coupon and a curse. What truly mattered was what they had done to me. They left me with nothing but a voucher and a curse. I was simply settling the score. "Change the locks on the house tonight," I said, my voice sounding odd in the stillness. "And call the hospital. Make sure my father's medical bills are fully covered for the next month. I don't want him stressing over money. I want him focusing on healing." Marcus nodded and exited the room to carry out the instructions. I was alone. I moved toward the floor-to-ceiling window. The sun had completely set, and below me, Atlanta spread out like a vast ocean of shimmering lights. From this height, the cars looked like blood cells coursing through the veins of a living organism. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my personal phone, the real one. I pulled it out. The number was one I hadn't seen in 5 years. Dad. I stared at the screen. My thumb hesitated over the decline button. I could shut him out too. He was weak. He stood by silently while they destroyed me. His silence made him part of it. But then I remembered how he used to look at me when I was little, before my mother's ambition had poisoned everything. I remembered the man who secretly gave me candy. I remembered the man who looked so small and broken in the hospital waiting room. I slid the bar to answer. "Zoe." His voice was hoarse, a faint echo of the man he once was. "I'm here, Dad," I said. There was a sound from the other side, like a sob caught in his throat. "Your mother called me. She said you took everything. She said you're the devil." "She's wrong, Dad," I said, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. "I didn't take everything. I reclaimed what was stolen, and I'm not the devil. I'm just the result of her choices." I knew he was crying. I knew. I heard what they did, the fraud, the lies. I should have protected you. I should have been a father. "You still can be," I said. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I have nothing, Zoe. I'm lying in a hospital bed. I have no home, no wife." "She's not coming back for me, is she?" "No," I said, "and she's worried about where she'll sleep tonight. She doesn't have space for you in her panic." "But Dad, listen to me. You're not homeless." "I'm not. No, I bought a condo last week. It's in a quiet building near the park. It has a guest room, a balcony. It's fully furnished." "Zoe, it's yours, Dad." I said, "If you want it, but there's a condition. Anything. You have to leave her. You need to divorce her. You can't bring that poison into my life again. If you choose her, you're on your own. If you choose me, you have a home, a daughter, and peace." There was a long pause. I held my breath. This was the ultimate test. Would he pick the abuser because it was familiar, or choose the unknown because it was healthier? "I choose you," he whispered. "I choose you, Zoe. Please come get me. I'll be there in the morning. I promise. Rest now, Dad. The bill is paid." I hung up. I placed the phone on the marble windowsill. I gazed out at the city. I thought about Brad sitting in a jail cell tonight, shedding his expensive suit for an orange jumpsuit, realizing his charm meant nothing to the judge. I thought about Amanda and Chantel on a plastic bench at a bus station, their designer luggage looking absurd against the dirt, realizing they had become what they despised. They would survive. Parasites always do. But they would never hurt me again. They would never make me feel small again. I turned back to the room. It was empty, vast, silent, once more. They would never diminish me again. I turned toward the room. It was vacant, expansive still. Some might label this solitude. They might claim that severing ties with your family leaves an emptiness in your soul that no wealth can fill. They might insist that blood ties are sacred and that forgiveness is noble. But those people have never been suffocated by their own kin. They have never received frozen meal coupons as a graduation present. They have never been told they should never have been born. I gazed at the vacant seat at the head of the table. My seat. It dawned on me that loneliness is merely the cost of freedom's ticket. It is the silent room where you finally hear your own truth. It is the blank canvas where you write your own story, with no one else holding the brush. I approached the table and lifted the emerald necklace. I let it catch the light. It was stunning. It was cold. It was mine. I slipped it into my pocket. I grabbed my bag. I exited the conference room and headed down the corridor. "Good night, Ms. Williams," Sarah said as I passed her desk. "Good night, Sarah," I replied. "See you tomorrow." I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors shut, I caught my reflection in the gleaming metal. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see failure. I saw a woman who had built a fortress from the stones they hurled at her. I left the building and stepped into the cool night. The valet brought my car around, not the old Honda this time, but the company vehicle, the sleek black SUV. I climbed in and drove off. I didn't glance back. I didn't wonder where my mother spent the night. I didn't fret over my sister's tears. I drove toward the hospital to visit my father. I drove toward my destiny. They say you can't choose your family. That's a lie. You can choose. You can choose yourself. You can choose your pride. You can choose your peace. And if the price of that choice is dining alone, so be it. Because the meal tastes sweeter when you pay your own way, and the view from the summit is worth every scar earned. I am Zoe Williams. I exist, and at last I am free. This tale reveals a profound truth. Your value is never set by those who fail to recognize it, even if they are your own blood. Zoe's path from a rejected daughter to a powerhouse CEO shows that the best vengeance isn't shouting back, but quietly rising. Toxic people feed on your craving for their approval to control you. By walking away and creating her own kingdom, Zoe didn't just survive, she flourished. True freedom means understanding that family ties don't give anyone permission to harm you. Sometimes you must burn bridges to light the path ahead. If you've ever had to build your own seat after being denied one, tap that like button and subscribe for more stories of courage and triumph.